it comes to hunting, we have our good days and we have our bad days.
I just killed the biggest deer of my life. Let's go.
Sometimes it may feel like the bad outweighs the good.
Dang it.
Days, weeks, months, sometimes even years of preparation and hard work with what feels like little to no results.
Fucking idiot.
But we press on in hopes of the day that it all pays off. And this just happened to be one of those days.
He's here!
This is the story of 2 trophy bucks in 24 hours. But I can assure you the story starts long before those 24 hours began.
Well, we've been hunting on this ranch in Texas the last 5 or 6 years. About 3 years ago, after deer season was over, we were doing some varmint calling. We stumbled on a really nice, secluded little patch, not even a major field. Actually saw several doe and a nice buck come running out of there while we were varmint calling. And well, the next year came and we didn't have a stand, so we just decided to take a couple of old aluminum lawn chairs back and set up in a fence row back up in some cedar bushes, and it turned out we killed a nice 8-point buck opening day. And then a couple of months into the season, Cannon had a chance at a really nice 10-point buck. He was able to make a shot on that at about 200 yards. So the next year, which was 2022, we decided we would try to put some permanent stands up, ladder stands, that would give us better visibility.
Believe it or not, as soon as we got the stand up in the tree, Sam disappeared.
You can't just hide up there. We got work to do, man. Get down here.
Welcome to my crib.
I'm gonna give a tour.
MTV cribs, baby.
Yes, sir. What kind of square footage are we talking up here?
About 3.
A couple weeks went by and bow season opened. I've been bow hunting for probably 4 or 5 years now and never really was successful. So this year I was determined to get something with my bow. So as soon as deer season opened up, I was out there and I was in that stand with my bow.
All right, guys, it's October 6th. We just got out here for a morning hunt. I'm about to get my stuff, go into the stand and get everything set up. Shoulder. Dang it.
So I finally got to fulfill this dream I'd had since a kid of being able to take a deer with a bow. But to my surprise, when this happened, I still had that itch to go out there and get back in the stand. Something that came unexpected to me was I got permission to hunt on a place in Oklahoma. Once I got this permission, we went out there, we scouted the place out. It was about 150 acres, and when I got there, I could just tell that there were just deer everywhere. We looked around, scouted the place out. I hung up a stand, picked out a good spot where I thought deer would be coming in, put up a trail camera, and it wasn't a week until I had pictures of some really nice bucks coming in, and I started to get pretty excited. But I couldn't find the time to be able to go out there and actually get a good sit and a good hunt in. I was juggling hunting in Texas, hunting in Arkansas, as well as school, work, and all these other things, and it was just like an itch that I had that I couldn't scratch.
Opening weekend in Texas came, and we were at the ranch and excited, and everybody was in their place. We had quite an exciting day. I saw a pretty good buck, actually a couple of bucks, chasing about 8 or 10 doe through a tree line around the pasture where I was hunting, and they headed Cannon's way, and he got a quick glimpse of them, but not a chance to have a shot. Before opening weekend finished, Cannon and I had a chance to go out the second evening. He was able to put down a giant boar hog. The hog ran off in the grown-up field. Cannon stood up in the back of the mule with a flashlight, and we were able to find it. He was a beauty. He was a big old pig.
So opening weekend in Texas passed, and right after that we were met with opening weekend in Arkansas. So we get over to Arkansas, we get everything set up the day before, check all the stands, everything's looking good. And the very first morning I get back there, I get in there, I get set up, and I kid you not, 5 minutes go by and I just hear all these leaves and sticks breaking behind me, and I'm like, there's no way. And I turn around to my left, and it's pretty tight up there, and I turn around to my left and I see two doe just sprinting. I keep watching, and next thing I know, this buck comes out. He comes out and he stops, and I turn to get my gun up, and he looks right at me, and he's staring right at me, so I can't move my gun. There's him looking at me, and then there's a doe right out to my left. I'm having to stare down with this buck, and the doe over here decides that she's had enough, and she takes off. And when she took off, he took off. And I mean, all this happened within, I would say, maybe 30 seconds. And that was pretty much the most action I would have the rest of the weekend.
Well, being the old man in the group, I was hunting closest to the cabin. A nice 8-point buck stepped out. I took him right off in one shot, and he dropped.
He isn't the biggest 8-point I've ever seen, but I think he's one of the first deer over in these woods I've ever shot that was actually chasing the doe. She came through and had her tail up high and was running fast. I took my safety off. I said, well, doe, thank you very much, because I know he's fixing to be behind you. I don't know what he's going to be, but if he's legal, he's going down.
So Monday comes around, which was our last day to be there, and we get there early, get in the stand, nothing happening for me. But that day, at about 10:30, a shot went off, and I knew it had to be Sam. Sam was hunting on our high line, 200 to 300 yards from where I was sitting, so I felt confident that was Sam. So when my hunt came to an end, I gave him a call. He told me he had gotten a buck. So I went over there, gave him a hard time about the size of his buck, but I couldn't really be making fun because I didn't have a buck myself. So
And he looked right up at me, dude. I didn't even have my gun on my shoulder yet. He looked right at me. I literally went, boom. Like, I got my gun up so fast and shot.
So we get back to Texas, and I didn't really have many opportunities to get back in the stand for a few days, but Big Daddy did. Big Daddy was out at the ranch. He was sitting in the tower stand, and he'd seen everything from hogs to bucks to, I mean, he was just seeing stuff everywhere. We finally find a day that me and Daniel can get out there, and Big Daddy tells us, he says, I've been seeing all this stuff in the tower stand, and I want you guys to sit there today. So me and Daniel get settled in for an afternoon hunt. I look to my left, and I see a coyote coming. I said, Daniel, we got a coyote. Get your gun, get ready.
Hey! Smoke. Smoke. Let's go. First coyote, baby. He's down like a sack of potatoes.
At this point, it was roughly 4 in the afternoon, so we still had an hour to 2 hours left of hunting. So we got settled back in the stand after we went and checked out his coyote. About 30 minutes goes by, and Daniel looks out the window to my left, and he says, there's a deer, Cannon.
It's a shooter.
Really?
Yes. Can you see?
Yeah, I'm on.
Like, good.
Oh, he's a shooter.
Okay, I'm about to shoot.
Okay.
Did he drop?
Don't think so.
I think he dropped, dude.
I think so.
I think he dropped. I think he dropped.
We start screaming like little girls and start celebrating, and then I look out to my left, and there he is.
Oh, wait. What?
He's standing there eating like nothing ever happened. So I shuck another one back in my gun, and I shoot again.
No way.
There's no way.
Nothing happened, so I tried again.
You have got to be kidding me.
I just keep shooting at this deer, and it just wasn't happening. The deer had finally decided that something was up, and he started making his way off, and I decided that I would try at least one more time. So as he's walking off, I shoot one more shot.
You got him.
I'm so confused, dude.
He starts shaking his head, and I didn't really know what that meant. We watched him walk back off and just kind of go in the woods like nothing happened. That evening when we got back home, I looked back at the footage, and that last shot hit the deer in the base of the ear, and you can see it kind of cut his ear off at the base and was kind of hanging down. So my gun definitely needed to be resighted in, and I did take care of that a couple weeks later, but it was shooting way high.
Well, Thanksgiving is always family time, and we look forward to that as well. But in the back of our mind, if we're deer hunters, we also know as soon as we've had our turkey and dressing, we're heading to the woods if all possible. Cannon and I decided to go out to the ranch and hunt the Friday after Thanksgiving. I hadn't any sooner got to a spot, and all the way down at the end of this giant hay pasture, half a mile, maybe further, I could see a buck was bedded down at the edge of the field, and his horns were sticking up pretty high, and I realized if I can see that deer at a half a mile, he's got to be a good buck. I got in touch with Cannon, said there's a big buck at the end of this hay field. I think we ought to make a stalk on him.
thinking the best bet is go across this field, get to this dam over here, get on the other side of it.
We pull this off, this is going to be one for the books. There's the doe. Yeah, he's out.
I don't know. He's still standing.
Wasn't that a hoot? I was looking at her and she was looking that way, and the next thing I knew, I looked up and he got up and he was gone.
By this time, Cannon and I were really kind of rattled. We had both taken some long shots at some deer that were decent bucks, and it just looked like maybe our season was going downhill. Matter of fact, it looked like it was going down the toilet.
So with the way things were going in Texas with my rifle, I figured it was about time for me to try my bow out in Oklahoma. So I decided to rearrange my work schedule in a way that it put me in Oklahoma at least once a week. So around November 20th, me and Daniel finally get to go over there and we get in our first sit. I saw 2 young bucks and I saw a bunch of doe, and it really got my hopes up and showed me the potential that this place had. I did go home empty-handed that night without a buck in the back of my truck, but my hopes were back up again. I was determined to go back and have some more sits there and try to get myself an opportunity at a bigger deer. But while I was focused on this Oklahoma property, Big Daddy still had some unfinished business to attend to back in Texas.
Well, after the fiasco on the Friday after Thanksgiving, I was ready to try to make up for some bad shooting. And I was ready to shoot a buck. Now, I really enjoy hunting with the boys and knowing that other people are in the woods with me, but there's something about a solo hunt that's very special as well. It was a pleasant day. I remember I took my hunting vest off and was hunting in my old Texas hoodie, and even had to pull the sleeves up on it because it was warm. It was probably in the upper 60s. Heavy rains the week before, and I just really expected that the wildlife would be on the move down in the river bottom. The afternoon wore on, and around 4 o'clock, a little buck, maybe 6-point buck, ran a doe into my left, chased her around the field, and I thought, well, that's really interesting now that I know that we've got a hot doe in this area. Maybe some more bucks will show up later in the evening. About 30 minutes after that, close to 5 o'clock, I looked up across the field, and I looked back in the woods, and I could see deer movement. I used my binoculars. I couldn't make out what was what. I just knew that there were several deer back in the woods that were moving around back there, and I thought surely the little buck is chasing some of those doe. And then I saw antlers, and I put my binoculars up, and I realized, hey, there's a good buck out there, probably 150 yards in the timber, moving rather rapidly. I said to myself, I'm going to take this buck. Well, he kept coming my way with his head down on the ground, cold trailing the doe that had just come through 30 minutes earlier, and as soon as he jumped the fence, turned broadside, I took my shot. And he dropped right there. Well, I thought, man, I have killed a really nice 8-point buck. Actually, as I walked up to him, I realized he was a 5-point on the left side, and I thought, I wonder if he's a 5-point on the right side. And when I pulled him up, I realized I had shot a perfect Texas 10-point buck. I knew I couldn't drag the deer. It was a very heavy-bodied deer, and I had no choice but to first call Cannon and Daniel.
Big Daddy texted me and sent me a picture of a big 10 that he killed out at the ranch. So me and Daniel are about to get in the truck, and we're gonna go out there and help him get it back to the house. So we're gonna go out there and see what he got.
We did some picture taking and videoing, and they helped me load him up, and we got him back to town. It was probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night by the time we got in with the big buck. The next afternoon, about 5 o'clock, I came home, and Grandma Linda told me that Cannon and Daniel had gone to Oklahoma. And I said, Grandma, I expect Cannon to call one of these evenings to tell me he needs some help because he shot a good buck with his bow. And about that time, she looked at her phone and she said, well, Cannon's calling right now.
It was an unusual day. We got there and it's November 29th, so it's supposed to be cold. And we get there and it's 75 degrees, so there's already a little bit of uncertainty there of how are these deer gonna be acting today? Is it even worth being here? But I get my bow, I get my cameras, I get all my stuff ready, and I start heading to my stand. And I'm walking there, and as I'm getting close, probably about 40 yards to my stand, I looked to my left and I jumped up a deer, and it ran off. And so I'm already kind of uncertain as to how the day is gonna go because of the weather, but then this this just kind of adds to the uncertainty. By the time I get to my stand, I'm not really feeling all that confident about the day itself. And it didn't help that once I finally got in the stand, got everything set up, about 3:30, 4 o'clock, I look behind my feeder and I see a whole herd of cows coming. I finally had enough of it, got down and kind of ran them off and shooed them away, and my hopes were pretty much gone for the evening. But despite the circumstances, I got back in my stand, I settled back down. It was a very windy day, and with the way the day was going, I would have expected that I would have had a terrible wind, but the wind was actually in my favor. It was blowing right in my face, and it was a perfect wind for that stand, so that gave me just a little bit of hope. 5 o'clock rolls around, and I see some deer coming in behind my feeder. A couple doe come in and start working their way around me, and then a few more come in, and I think I had about 4 or 5 doe just messing around, eating some corn, and so that's really got my hopes back up, and I'm starting to kind of get that confidence back again. So I'm watching these doe intently, and some of them start slowly making their way towards me and working their way behind me. As they're making their way behind me, all of a sudden I just hear these leaves rustling, and I look to my left and I look through the thick of the cedars, and I get a glimpse of a deer coming, and I couldn't see any horns, but I saw a deer with his head and his nose tucked down into the ground, and I just had that gut feeling that this is a buck and it's about to happen. He's on a beeline coming right to my left, and I just felt everything kind of coming together in that moment.
I just killed the biggest deer of my life. I have no idea if I got that on video. I think I heard him go down. I just killed the biggest deer of my life. Are you kidding me? Oh my, dude. Oh, I just killed the biggest deer of my life, man. With a bow. I just killed the biggest deer of my life. Are you kidding me?
But after all this excitement and trying to process what had just happened, I had to call Big Daddy. I had to let him know what had just happened. So I called Big Daddy.
Hello. Is Big Daddy with you?
Yeah. What's up, man?
Big Daddy, I just killed the biggest deer of my life.
I just told Grandma, I said, I'm going to get a call one of these nights from Cannon, and he might have to go up there and help him out.
I just killed the biggest deer of my life, 15 yards to my left.
Oh, Cannon!
I shot high, but I think I hit him through the lungs. But I was just calling to see if you would like to come help out. I don't plan on looking for him until you get here.
All right, everybody got good lights?
Yeah.
I'll see you in about 30 minutes.
Okay. By the time Big Daddy had got there, our patience had run out, and we said, we got to go look for this deer. We've got to go see if he's down.
All right, Big Daddy's here. Let the search begin, baby. Let's go.
And it didn't take us 30 seconds to find that first drop of blood. I followed that trail for maybe 40 to 60 yards, and I mean, I've never been on a blood trail with that much blood, so I knew that I had hit this deer, and I knew that I had made a vital shot. It was just a matter of time before we were going to walk right up on him.
That's what I'm talking about. Oh, he's right there. Oh my God. He's right there. He's right there. Oh my God. He's huge.
Oh my great
Golly.
boy, you smoked him.
Hey, giant, man.
He's a 10.
He is. Oh my God.
Cannon, that's not the 10 on camera.
No. I don't know what deer this is. I've never seen this deer in my life.
Well, you're getting to meet him up close and personal right now, Cannon. Look at the neck on that deer.
Unreal. I told y'all he was big, boys. He's a toad, man. Oh, thank you, Lord.
You have mapped this thing out perfect.
I
You picked your spot.
Literally everything I said is what has happened. They came right out. All those deer just living back there and all that thick stuff, and I'm just sitting on the outside of it, and they just came right to me. We came in here probably mid-October and put a stand up where I kind of figured the deer would be coming out of their bedding area, and I mean, I had it nailed to a T. He did exactly what I thought these deer were doing, and it just all came together today, and I could not be more happy with this deer. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Big Daddy, for helping me. Y'all have done a lot for me, so I appreciate all of it. And man, this is this is awesome. And I did it with a bow. It's my first buck with a bow. Videoed it all. Everything just came together today, and it's a really good feeling. So we're gonna get him taken care of, get him back to the house, and I think I've made a bow hunter out of myself. This is fun.
This is what it's all about.
This is fun, man.
The time when I'd slung my arrow was about 5:15, and 24 hours before that was the exact moment that Big Daddy had pulled the trigger on his big Texas 10. So what had taken years of preparation and all this work and all these highs and lows that had gone into this deer season all came full circle and paid off in these 24 hours of hunting. It was a blessing to be able to share those experiences with Big Daddy, and I know that it was a blessing to me for him to be able to share that experience with me as well. And Daniel being there a part of it, he was there every step of the way too, and helped me out and helped Big Daddy out, and it was just a great moment of success, a lot of hard work that had finally come full circle and paid off. When we first decided to sit down and tell this story and make this video about these 24 hours of hunting, my initial thought was to just start at the beginning of those 24 hours, but I started to realize that that's not where the story began, that there was much more throughout the season that went into that and all that effort and time that made this happen. But even what's been shown in this video is really not the full story. Everything I've ever known as a hunter and everything I've ever learned as a hunter has contributed to us being able to accomplish this feat. And in these moments of work and in these moments of effort and putting in all this time and money and our resources over the years into this passion that we have for hunting, I really couldn't see the results, but I had a faith and I had a hope in what I couldn't see, and we just kept pushing towards that goal. I knew all these moments of meticulously tuning up my bow, shooting, practicing in the backyard, hanging tree stands, filling feeders, and just putting all these hours after hours into a deer stand and sitting in a tree. I knew that eventually all this would someday pay off. But as hunters, these moments of pushing towards a goal, straining towards something that we don't really fully understand, but we just keep persevering and pushing on, I feel like these moments of hard work and effort and straining towards this goal, I feel like it can be directly related to the faith and the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. I want to take you to a verse in 1 Corinthians 15. It's 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58. For now, we're just going to read half of this verse, and we're going to come back and look at the rest of it later. But starting about halfway through it says, "Always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless." Paul tells us that nothing we ever do for the Lord is ever useless. And I feel like when we really start to think about these words, I feel like it can be kind of a hard pill for us to swallow at times. As Christians, we are called to live differently. We are called to live differently than the world that is around us. If we look over in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 11, it says, "Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners to keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls." Peter tells us that we are foreigners and that we are temporary residents in this world. Over in Philippians, I believe it's in chapter 3, Paul tells us that our citizenship is in heaven. So if we take a step back and look at this from kind of an outside perspective, living in the United States, if a foreigner from another country comes in, they're going to look different. And that's the same if you live in another country and an American comes, they're going to stand out. They're going to look different, they're going to act different, and they're just going to stand out. And that is what Peter and Paul are telling us here, that as Christians, it's okay to stand out. We're going to be different. We're not going to think like the world, we're not going to act like the world, and we're not going to look like the world in the way that we live and conduct our lives. And the truth is, this can be challenging for us at times because we live in a world and we're surrounded by people who are constantly satisfying the desires of their flesh, and they're indulging in sin, and that same temptation is there for us in our lives. We see this happening, and we are tempted to dive into these temporary satisfactions that the world offers us. When we see all this, we may start to wonder, well, am I missing out? Is all of this pointless? Do I really need to live a certain way? Do I really need to live a life that glorifies God? And the simple answer to that question is yes. But we're kind of going to look through this and break it down a little more. I want us to take a step back and look at this from a different perspective. I want us to view this from the perspective of a hunter. As a hunter, I wouldn't put in so much effort during the deer season if I didn't have a faith in a greater cause, or if I didn't have faith in a greater result. In the same way, I wouldn't strive to live my life in a certain way if I didn't have a faith in what God has done for us through His Son. And through this, we start to see that faith is the evidence of what we hope for. If we jump over to James in chapter 2, verse 26, James tells us that faith without works is dead. And again, I want to take a step back and look at this from the perspective of a hunter. If I tell you that I have faith that I can kill a deer, but I don't put in the time, I don't put in the effort, and I don't even ever physically sit in a deer stand, are you going to look at me and think that I'm a faithful deer hunter? The answer is no, and if I continue to live like that, I'm never going to actually kill a deer. And in the same way, we can judge our faith in Jesus by the fruits of our faith and the works that come from our faith. If we have a true and genuine faith in Jesus, these works will not be something that we have to sit down and we have to try to make happen. If we have a true and genuine faith in Him, they will come naturally, and they will prove our faith not only to us, but to those who are around us as well. I mentioned earlier that faith is the evidence that what we hope for is real. If we look at Hebrews 11 in verse 1, it says, "Faith is the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things that we cannot see." Faith is the evidence that what we hope for is real. When I'm relentlessly pursuing an animal and I'm putting in all this time, this money, this effort, and all these things into it, it proves to me that what I'm searching for and what I'm trying to accomplish is real and that it can happen. And through that, my faith is strengthened, and that encourages me and it pushes me to keep going and to keep striving towards that goal. And the same thing can be said about us within our walk with Jesus. When we have a true and we have a genuine faith in Him, and we relentlessly pursue Him just like we relentlessly pursue these wild animals, the works of our faith will begin to come naturally. And when they do, they will continue to encourage us in our faith, and they will continue to push us to want to have this relationship with Him and want to do these things for Him and want to live a life that glorifies Him. And you may be hearing all this right now, and you may be thinking, well, I want that. I want to live a life for Jesus, but I just can't. I can't be perfect, and I can't do the right thing all the time. And you're right, that is the truth. You can't, and I can't either. But that is where Jesus comes in. Jesus paid the price for our sin. Jesus took our sin, took our place on that cross, and bore our sin for us. And by the grace of God, through the faith that we have in His Son and what He has done for us, we can be made righteous in His sight. We will never be able to be righteous by our own works. We will never be able to have a righteousness that comes from ourselves. But that is why we have to have faith, because God allows us to be made righteous through His Son and through the faith that we have in Him. And when we have this faith, it continues to encourage us, and it allows us to become confident in the salvation that God has freely given us. So what now? Well, the question we asked earlier was, do I really need to live out my faith? Do I really need to live a life that glorifies God? And the answer to that is obviously yes. When we live out our faith, when we seek to live a life that glorifies God and we seek His will above our own, it shows us that our faith is not dead, and it proves to us that our faith is genuine. So as we go throughout our lives, we can't think that all these things that we do for God, the way that we try to live for God, is pointless or that it's all in vain. When we live a life and we seek to live a life that glorifies God and we seek His will above the will of our own or above what the world tells us that we should be doing, it not only continues to encourage us in our faith, but it also will be an encouragement to all those who are around us. And through that, God will use our faith and the example that we set in trying to portray the image of Christ. He will use that to allow many more people to come to know Christ. And when they do, their lives will be changed, and they too will glorify God throughout the lives that they live. So I want to leave you today with the verse that we started this off with. And at the beginning, I didn't read through the whole thing. I feel like it's more appropriate to read the whole thing now, since we've kind of worked through this and come to a conclusion, and I feel like it's more powerful this way. So again, we're in 1 Corinthians 15, and starting in verse 58. And the first word is so, or therefore, or in conclusion. So in verse 58 it says, "So, my dear brothers and sisters, be strong and immovable. Always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless." Nothing we do for the Lord is ever useless. When we live our lives and walk by faith and seek Jesus and try to live a life that glorifies Him and seek His will above our own, He will continue to work through us and encourage us in our faith, and He will also allow us to be an encouragement to all those who are around us and continue to lead more people to Christ.